The heavy snow fell silently over the Wolfschanze in the winter of 1943, blanketing the bunkers and fortifications in a deceptive purity that bore no relation to the calculations of death being made within. Deep inside the reinforced concrete labyrinth, in a room lit by harsh electric lights that never saw the sun, Adolf Hitler had gathered his most senior military commanders for a briefing that would be unlike any they had previously attended. The map spread across the massive table showed the entire European theater, but Hitler's attention was focused on a single dossier, its cover marked with the British War Office seal captured by German intelligence. The Führer's hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages, though whether from the neurological condition that had begun to plague him or from genuine emotion, none of the assembled officers could determine with certainty. Field Marshal Keitel stood rigidly at attention, his iron cross gleaming in the artificial light. General Jodl maintained his customary expression of bureaucratic efficiency, while Guderian shifted his weight from foot to foot, impatient as always for action rather than analysis. Admiral Dönitz represented the Kriegsmarine, his weathered face bearing the marks of too many years studying the merciless arithmetic of the Atlantic War. These men had conquered nations, planned campaigns across continents, and sent millions to their fates with the stroke of a pen. Yet on this particular evening, they would be forced to confront a reality that challenged their fundamental assumptions about the nature of their enemy. Hitler began the briefing without preamble, his voice carrying that peculiar mixture of intensity and control that characterized his more lucid analytical moments. The intelligence file before him contained transcripts, photographs, operational analyses, and biographical information that German agents had compiled over months of painstaking work. The subject was not Winston Churchill, whom Hitler had long since categorized as a bellicose drunk propped up by Jewish interests. Nor was it Franklin Roosevelt, dismissed as a crippled puppet of American capitalism. The dossier concerned a man whose name was barely known outside military circles, a professional soldier who avoided publicity and shunned the limelight with deliberate consistency. Alan Francis Brooke, recently elevated to Field Marshal and given the title Viscount Alan Brooke, served as Chief of the Imperial General Staff and Churchill's principal military advisor. His photograph showed a thin-faced man with intense eyes and a rather bird-like nose, utterly unremarkable in appearance. Nothing about his physical presence suggested the strategic genius that Hitler had come to recognize, and that very ordinariness made him more dangerous. Brooke did not look like Napoleon or Hannibal or Frederick the Great. He looked like a competent bureaucrat, which was precisely how he preferred to appear, while his mind worked through problems of continental scope with mathematical precision. Hitler's analysis began with Brooke's early career, and the assembled generals soon realized this would be no ordinary intelligence briefing. The Führer had clearly spent considerable time studying his adversary, absorbing details that most commanders would have delegated to subordinates. Brooke had been born in France to an Anglo-Irish family with a long military tradition. Educated at the Royal Military Academy Woolwich and commissioned into the Royal Artillery in 1902, he had fought in the First World War with distinction, rising to command an artillery brigade and earning mentions in dispatches for his tactical acumen. Between the wars, while many British officers retreated into comfortable garrison life, Brooke had studied obsessively. He had attended the Staff College at Camberley, taught at the School of Artillery, and written extensively on modern warfare. The crucial point Hitler emphasized to his listening officers was that Brooke had recognized earlier than most the implications of mechanized warfare. While hidebound British generals still thought in terms of cavalry charges and colonial expeditions, Brooke had grasped that tanks and aircraft would fundamentally transform military operations. He had studied German tactical innovations with particular care, absorbing the lessons of combined arms operations that the Wehrmacht had demonstrated so devastatingly in Poland and France. He knew how the Germans fought because he had made it his business to know, and that knowledge informed every decision he made. Hitler's recounting of Dunkirk revealed a particularly troubling pattern. Brooke had commanded the British Second Corps during the evacuation, and German field commanders who faced his units reported something unusual. While other British formations had crumbled or panicked, Brooke's corps maintained discipline and fighting effectiveness. Even as the perimeter contracted toward the beaches, his artillery had been positioned with uncanny skill, creating killing zones that punished German attacks. His infantry withdrew in good order, maintaining contact with adjacent units, refusing to yield ground without exacting a price. Most tellingly, intercepted communications showed that Brooke had wanted to counterattack, to bloody the German nose, even in the midst of catastrophic defeat. The professional soldiers in Hitler's audience understood the significance of this detail. A commander who thought about attacking while retreating was not a man easily intimidated. More importantly, Brooke had subordinated his aggressive instincts to the larger strategic requirement of preserving British military capability. He had swallowed his pride, accepted the humiliation of evacuation, and salvaged the trained manpower that would form the core of Britain's rebuilt army. That demonstrated a quality rare among generals, the ability to distinguish between tactical gratification and strategic necessity. After Dunkirk, Churchill had appointed Brooke as Commander-in-Chief Home Forces, responsible for defending Britain against the invasion that seemed imminent in the summer of 1940. Hitler's intelligence sources had monitored the transformation of British defenses with growing alarm. Within weeks, Brooke had reorganized the entire defensive scheme. He created mobile reserves positioned to respond rapidly to any landing. He fortified the most vulnerable beaches with obstacles and mines. He established a network of strong points that could isolate any German beachhead. Most significantly, he had trained ordinary British soldiers to fight with a determination that surprised German intelligence analysts, accustomed to thinking of the British as soft and war-weary. The defensive preparations had been characterized by a quality that Hitler found both admirable and infuriating: efficiency. Brooke wasted no effort on showmanship or propaganda. He simply identified what needed to be done and did it, allocating resources with ruthless logic. Concrete went where concrete was needed. Troops trained in the specific skills required for coastal defense. Artillery batteries covered precisely those approach routes most likely to be used by invasion forces. The entire system bore the hallmark of a mind that thought in terms of interlocking problems and elegant solutions. Hitler's analysis moved to the period after Britain survived the immediate invasion threat. In December 1941, Brooke had been appointed Chief of the Imperial General Staff, and from that moment the character of British military strategy had shifted fundamentally. The change was subtle enough that many German analysts had missed it initially, but Hitler had noticed. British operations acquired a coherence they had previously lacked. Instead of scattered reactive responses to German initiatives, British strategy began to demonstrate long-term planning and clear prioritization. The most striking example was Brooke's management of the North African campaign. Churchill had been desperate to hold Egypt and protect the route to India, committing forces to a theater that absorbed resources without producing decisive results. Brooke had opposed this dispersal of effort, arguing that Britain's limited military capacity should be concentrated in preparation for the eventual return to Europe. But when overruled by Churchill, Brooke had done something remarkable.
He had supported the North African campaign with precisely calculated sufficiency, sending just enough men and material to prevent collapse while maintaining British strength for the campaign he knew would actually matter. This was the work of a mind thinking several moves ahead. Hitler explained to his generals that Brooke understood he could not simply refuse Churchill's directives, so he complied in a manner that minimized the strategic cost while maintaining the political relationship essential to his effectiveness. He accepted tactical setbacks in North Africa with equanimity because he recognized they were occurring in a secondary theater. When Tobruk fell and Churchill raged, Brooke remained calm, already calculating how the temporary embarrassment could be transformed into an opportunity to rationalize British deployments.